Ugh, what's that awful smell?
Probably one of the states on this list, cause they all stink!
You know what? I think you're right. Cause it's month number 2 of 2022, which means it's time for a new list of the worst states to live in. Now, there are actually quite a few newcomers this year, as the cost of housing has gotten ridiculously expensive in some once decent states, and other states that were once terrible have improved a ton. So if your state is one of the worst, there is hope. Well, unless you live in Mississippi, in which case, get the heck out of there as soon as you can. But even if your state isn't that bad statistically speaking, you still might want to move somewhere new. So I'll tell you what, let's hit 5,000 likes and I'll make a video on the 10 best states to move to in 2022. But without further ado, these are the top 10 worst states to live in for 2022, based on each state's economy, safety, cost of living, schools, and quality of life. Number 10. Alaska. More Alaskans think their state is the best than any other state's residents, and I can see why. I mean, nearly the entire state is gorgeous, untouched wilderness. But I hate to break it to any Alaskans watching, but even you know the Alaskan dividend that literally pays residents thousands a year just to live here can't make up for the extremely expensive cost of living, with the second highest utility and grocery bills in the nation. In fact, if you live in the interior, the cost of heating alone for over half the year could be anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a month. And for the 4 months out of the year where it isn't freezing, you'll have to deal with millions of mosquitoes. Yeah, it's bug bites or frostbite. Take your pick. And sure, the poverty rate of 9.6% isn't that bad, since the median household income is pretty high at $75,500. But because the state also has the least diverse and fastest shrinking economy, wages have actually decreased by 7.3% over the last 3 years. And that's if you can even find a job, because the unemployment rate of 5.8% is the 5th highest of any state. But all those issues, in addition to the last frontier having the second worst schooling system, pale in comparison to the fact that Alaska is by far the most dangerous state, with a violent crime rate that's more than double the national average. And no, it's not because of the grizzly bears.
Hey man, don't bring me into this!
Number 9, South Carolina. Despite being the third most moved to state in 2021, or perhaps because it was, the quality of life in South Carolina continues to deteriorate, because all those newcomers have caused the median home value to balloon by 22% over the past 12 months to $257,000, which still might not seem like that much, but considering that the median household income is just $56,000, it is unaffordable for most. Now sure, the Charleston and Greenville areas do have decent economies, which helped the state see 5.6% wage growth last year. But there's also a huge division of wealth between the cities, which are pretty nice places to live, and the rural parts, which are really struggling. Overall, the Palmetto State has the 9th highest poverty rate at 13.8%, and as poverty increases, so does the crime. So it should come as no surprise that South Carolina now has the 5th highest crime rate and 7th highest violent crime rate. And since the public schools are also the 7th worst of any state, the future doesn't look bright. But hey, at least most of the people moving in are just beach-seeking retirees, and Myrtle Beach is pretty affordable. Number 8. Tennessee. Tennessee is another state people are moving to in droves, and I really don't know why. Sure, with the Great Smoky Mountains, tons of beautiful forests and rivers, and of course Nashville, the state has potential. But that's all it has. Potential. Because outside of Nashville's booming economy, where the median household income is $70,300, Tennessee is defining the term struggle bus. And that bus is full of crime and zero economic opportunity. The volunteer state currently has the 3rd highest violent crime rate, and at the rate crime is growing, who knows? Maybe it'll pass Alaska for the title of most dangerous state by the end of the decade. I mean, just this past year, Memphis overtook both St. Louis and Detroit to become the most dangerous city in America, with a violent crime rate 506% above the national average. But considering that the poverty rate of 13.6% is the 10th highest of any state, as wages just aren't keeping up with the median home cost that's increased by 24% over the past year to $264,000, it makes sense why so many people are resorting to crime. And if you're thinking,
okay, fine, I guess I'll just just move to Nashville then if everywhere else sucks.
The violent crime rate in Music City is still more than triple the national average, and the median home value is approaching $400K, which isn't exactly music to anyone's ears. Number 7. Alabama. Sweet Home Alabama is finally starting to live up to its nickname, almost entirely thanks to Huntsville, which is absolutely carrying the state out of the gutter. But to be fair, the state as a whole is also making improvements, like how the crime rate went from the 7th highest of any state to just 19th highest over the course of the past year. Now, don't get me wrong, Alabama still has a long ways to go, as the schools are the 6th worst in the nation, and the average life expectancy is the 2nd lowest at just 74.9 years. Probably due to it also having the 3rd highest obesity rate and 6th worst healthcare. And although the cost of living is dirt cheap with a median home value of just $186,000, the poverty rate is still the 7th highest at 14.9% because the median household income is only $51,700. Although it is over $67,000 in Huntsville, which again is the only part of Alabama I'd actually recommend living in. Number 6, West Virginia.
What? First Alabama was number 7, and now West Virginia's not even in the bottom 5? What is this world we're living in?
Honestly, I don't think any of us would be surprised if we transferred to an alternate universe during 2020 or 2021. But yeah, while the Mountain State is still by no means a great place to live, with the 2nd lowest median household income of just $48,800 and the 4th highest poverty rate of 15.8%, it actually isn't terrible if you have an online job from another state. Well, as long as that state isn't Mississippi, because that's the only state with lower wages. And since more and more Americans can now work remote, more and more people are actually moving in, making West Virginia the 4th most moved to state in 2021. And considering that just about every inch of the place is drop dead gorgeous, I understand why, especially since the median home cost isn't even $125,000. Granted, West Virginia is also home to the worst infrastructure, 5th worst schools, 3rd worst economy, and 4th worst healthcare, so you kind of get what you pay for. But hey, at least it's the 10th safest state. Number 5. Kentucky. Over $150 million is wagered on the Kentucky Derby each year, but I highly doubt any of it goes back into helping average Kentuckians, because the quality of life here stinks more than all that horse poo. The poverty rate is the 6th highest in the nation at 15%, despite an incredibly cheap median home cost of just $182,000. And the public schools and healthcare are even worse. What can I say? Outside of horses and the 95% of the world's bourbon that's produced here, Kentucky just doesn't have much going for it, with the 5th worst economic opportunity and 3rd worst fiscal stability of any state. But even so, things probably wouldn't be this bad if the state government wasn't so busy swindling the public out of its tax dollars. In fact, a Harvard study just ranked Kentucky as the most corrupt state in terms of where taxpayer money is spent. Sadly though, most Kentuckians are too busy trying to scrape by on the median household income of just $52,200 to do anything about the corruption. Number 4. Arkansas. With the highest divorce rate in the country, it's no wonder Arkansas has the only diamond producing mine in the US. I mean, they gotta keep up with everyone's 2nd, 3rd, or who knows how many marriages. I'm really not judging though, because if I lived somewhere this boring, even I'd probably start a necessary relationship drama just to keep things interesting. But the dull lifestyle isn't the only reason Arkansans are the 2nd least happy residents of any state. No, that's more likely due to the fact that the natural state has the 4th worst economic opportunity, 7th worst infrastructure, 7th highest obesity rate, the worst healthcare, 9th worst schools, 3rd highest murder rate, 4th highest violent crime rate, 5th highest poverty rate, and 3rd lowest median household income at just $48,900. So if you were feeling tempted by the allure of the $163,000 median home cost, I'd recommend you look elsewhere, because the only opportunity the land of opportunity has to offer is front row seats to the World Championship duck calling contest. And to be fair, the Fayetteville area, which is a pretty decent city. Number 3. New Mexico. The only good thing about New Mexico's infrastructure is that it sucks so bad it keeps people away, which really helps preserve the natural landscape, especially since 75% of the roads here are unpaved. But while New Mexico's scenery is just as breathtaking as Colorado's without any of the crowds, just about everything else in the state is terrible, with the third worst air and water quality, the worst internet access, fifth highest unemployment rate, third worst economic opportunity, and third highest poverty rate at 16.8%. Not to mention, the rate of childhood poverty is 26%. And while a place like West Virginia can get away with being poorly run, as it's also dirt cheap, New Mexico's actually pretty expensive considering the median home value is $268,000, while the median income isn't even $52,000. So when you consider the dismal economic outlook combined with essentially no way out due to the Land of Enchantment also having the worst public schools, it shouldn't be a shocker that tons of people here break the law. New Mexico actually has the highest crime rate and second highest violent crime rate of any state. Number 2. Mississippi.
Wait, you're telling me Mississippi actually isn't the worst state to live in for once? Yes! Finally!
Well, don't get too excited, because the only reason Mississippi isn't number 1 is because it knows its worth. Meaning it's by far the cheapest state. Because even with a median home cost of just $153,000, it still has the highest poverty rate at 18.7%, which probably has something to do with the fact that it also has the worst economic opportunity with the lowest median household income at just $45,700. And honestly, that checks out, since the economy overall ranks dead last, as does the healthcare quality. Yeah, compared to Mississippi, even New Mexico seems like it's thriving. But if you love swamps and your ideal climate is as humid as the devil's armpit, this might actually be the place for you. In which case, say hi to Shrek for me. But if you're not an ogre, then I really can't think of any reason why anyone would actually want to live in a place with terrible schools, the third worst infrastructure, the highest obesity rate, and the lowest life expectancy at just 74.6 years. Now, before we get to number 1, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and let me know what you think the worst state is. And while some of you would probably say New York or
California,
yes, the quality of life in our 2 most well-known states has gone downhill in recent years, but they're still nowhere near as bad as the states on this list, however bad their problems may be. I mean, California has the 5th best economy in the world and might be the most beautiful state. And despite its flaws, there is no city on earth quite like New York. Not to mention, upstate is super affordable and gorgeous. Number 1. Louisiana. Even if Louisiana didn't get pummeled by so many behemoth hurricane disasters, its infrastructure would still be a disaster. But since it does get absolutely shreked by Mother Nature, the infrastructure is a catastrophe. That's honestly the least of its concerns, however, as the Pelican State also has the 3rd worst schools, 4th worst healthcare, 4th highest obesity rate, 4th worst economy, 2nd highest poverty rate, and 4th lowest median household income that's barely $51,000. Oh, and I almost forgot. Louisiana is the murder capital of the US and 2nd most dangerous state overall. Add in the fact that it's by far the most corrupt state, and it should come as no surprise that Louisiana is the worst state to live in for 2022.